Did your friend invite you to play D&D and you're stressed out about all of the options? Is this your first TTRPG and you just want to play something simple? Hello, I'm Nat Blue, and today I want to talk about good beginner class options for somebody just getting into D&D. So D&D can be an intimidating game to step into. 5th edition has 13 core classes to choose from, along with additional classes like the Artificer and some third-party content. Today, we will just be picking from the core classes. There are two types of classes in D&D, the Martial and the Spellcaster. Martial classes are more about physical fighting, while Spellcasters use magic to damage opponents and bolster allies. Some classes are considered half-casters. These classes don't accrue spells at the same rate as a full spellcaster, but they do have some martial ability compared to like the spellcaster counterparts. Now, before we get started, I wanted to say that the best beginner class for you is going to be the class that you have the most fun playing. These are classes that I think are a little bit easier to get into the hobby with, but any class in 5e is pretty beginner friendly. It is also important to remember that most classes are easier to learn if you start at level 1. A lot of DMs start campaigns at level 3 nowadays, and that works. But in that case, I would get with your DM to learn more about the class. I would watch YouTube videos about the class. Maybe even ask if your DM can make you a cheat sheet or find a cheat sheet online. I have done a review for a website called Armor Class that has specific character sheets for the different classes that will outline some of the abilities you get at different levels. And I love that website. I always recommend it to people. If you're interested in that, go check it out at armorclass.co. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I've just reviewed a couple of their products. So the most recommended class for a new player is always the fighter. But I would caution new players about this a little bit. Just because I think sometimes the fighter, it can be too easy to oversimplify your backstory. The class has good starter abilities like Second Wind for more health and Accent Surge for another action. The champion fighter seems to be built for new players. Nothing about this subclass is complicated. Critical hits are a little bit easier, and then at level 7, a bunch of your abilities get a little bit better. I think the simplicity of a fighter, like I briefly mentioned earlier, makes it easy to write a boring character. My first character was a champion fighter. I love him in retrospect, but when I first started that campaign, I was a little bored with the character. He was a little one-dimensional. He just liked to fight. He liked to charge into battle. He liked the thrill of it. But I had a good DM, and having a good DM helped me out a lot because he helped give the character moments to shine, helped spotlight him, and honestly helped expand his backstory a little bit through some side quests. The Battle Master can be intimidating because you get maneuvers. A maneuver is an additional effect that can be added to your attacks to harm or hinder opponents. The maneuvers aren't necessarily too complicated, but I know when I was a new player, this was intimidating to me, and that's why I picked the champion fighter. The Eldritch Knight allows you to blend some magic with your martial abilities. You can cast some wizard spells. This can be tough to balance for a new player, and I think the main reason is because you have to have a character that has good strength for your martial attacks, good constitution to make you tankier, and good intelligence to cast wizard spells. So that can be tough to balance. Now, the Barbarian can also be a good martial class to learn. You get more hit dice than other characters, so it's easier to make mistakes. You can take some more damage. Along with that, you get damage resistances. You don't have to wear armor. You can fight unarmored. The biggest drawback for a new Barbarian is remembering to use the rage mechanic, but I think that can be said for a lot of different classes. Fighters, you could forget to use Accent Surge, or you could be a little bit too conservative with Accent Surge. The Bard, you can forget to use Bardic Inspiration. I think there's an example of this for a lot of different classes. From experience, you might rely too much on your resistances and get yourself in trouble. I played a Barbarian that charged forward away from the party, jumped through a window into a seemingly abandoned house, and got into a fight with like 8 zombies at once and Cross of Strahd. And that went very poorly to me because although I was getting resistances to the damage that was being dealt, I was greatly overwhelmed in the action economy. And honestly, I think my biggest drawback is as a player who's been playing for probably 5 or 6 years now, not like an insane amount of time, I forgot that I could just disengage. So just remember that you can disengage, I guess. My favorite option for Barbarian is the Bear Totem. So other subclasses are good, but I think this is just my biggest recommendation because you get more damage resistances. Although it does seem like the stereotypical Barbarian, I would not recommend the Berserker. The effects of Frenzy are just too bad, especially in 2014's 5e because the effects of Exhaustion are just too bad to deal with that often. Now, going to a Spellcaster, the Warlock is a good spellcasting class for a new player. Warlock spells work slightly different from others since they use Pact Magic instead of Arcane, Divine, or Primal Magic. They have a smaller spell list, which is less options to go through, which is always nice for a new player. You don't have to look through dozens of spells. And Eldritch Blast is the best damage dealing cantrip in the game. And you get to add some stuff to Eldritch Blast, which is really nice and teaches you a lot about the game. You have enough charisma to be the face of the party if you want to be, which can be great for new players that might try to talk their way out of problems. I was a fighter trying to talk my way out of problems and it didn't work very well. The Rogue can be good for new players that want to stay in the shadows more, so they aren't the frontline fighters. Sneak attack is a gratifying amount of damage to deal to an enemy, but might take a little bit of time to understand. The easiest way to handle this is to just attack whoever is beside the frontline player. But you can also attack while being hidden, which is probably the most common way that people try to sneak attack. But I do always remind people that attacking while an enemy is beside an ally also gives you sneak attack. Honestly, I think it's just if you have advantage on the attack. So you can attack prone enemies. There's a lot of options with sneak attack. Cunning action allows the player to disengage or hide as a bonus action. That is really good. It's something that people often forget. So the Rogue, you could disengage from combat after hitting somebody up close. So if you wound up on somebody, stab them, you can disengage, and if you have enough movement speed, you can move away. And then you can also hide as a bonus action. So if you use your sneak attack, hit somebody with an arrow, you can use the bonus action to hide and set up for another sneak attack, which is really useful, as long as you don't get noticed. Rogues can be a bit soft, but that isn't an issue for somebody if you stay away from the combat. It might be good to try to get a feat like Alert to avoid being surprised. Alert is just a very good feat. And when you're a little bit of a softer character, it's very good because if you get surprise attacked, that could be it for the combat, depending on how strong the enemy is. The Arcane Trickster might be a little hard for new players because of the spells. Some players struggle with spells more than others, so this might not be the case for you. The Arcane Trickster doesn't get a lot of spells, and I do really like that they get Mage Hand. So I'm not saying don't take this, just remember that there is some spell casting involved in the Arcane Trickster. Honestly, if you want to be a rogue, but you're also curious about dipping your toes into spellcasting, the Arcane Trickster is not a bad option. The Assassin Rogue can be great if you go first in initiative, which should be easy being a dexterity class, depending on what the rest of your party looks like. You can do a lot of damage. If you surprise a creature, any hit is a critical hit, so it's really important that you are the one that initiates combats when like creatures can't see you. This can do a lot of damage with sneak attack, which, like I said, if they're surprised and you're hiding, you might be able to get a sneak attack in. And this is good for the player that wants to be the silent assassin, taking out targets before getting noticed. Especially with low-level creatures, an assassin rogue might be able to just finish somebody off in one hit. The thief rogue could be fun for a player that wants to steal from others, or a new player in a heist campaign like Keys from the Golden Vault. Keys from the Golden Vault, I played a few sessions of it. I really like the campaign. I think the Thief is the easiest class to pick for that campaign because there's not as much combat and stuff. But sometimes I don't love picking the easiest class for a campaign. If you're a new player, though, that might be a good option. The Swashbuckler can be a good subclass for beginners. The ability to land a strike and leave without an opportunity attack is great. For someone that will inevitably forget about opportunity attacks, I forgot about opportunity attacks a lot in my first sessions as a fighter. At later levels, it can be important to have decent charisma though, because there's a lot of abilities that take your charisma modifier into account. And there are also maneuvers in this, like the Battle Master. I just don't think there are as many maneuvers. And the last one I wanted to talk about is the Paladin. So the Paladin can be good for a new player that wants to step into spellcasting but is concerned about complexity. You can be the healer in the group while also being a decent damage dealer. Smite is your bread and butter. It's a fun mechanic to use for some extra damage, and there's a few different variations on Smite. Most of the time, I find myself just using Divine Smite because it's really good, but there are other smites like Searing Smite and Scorching Smite. The armor proficiencies will make you harder to get down. Lay on Hands is a pretty solid healing option, and it can help poisoned or diseased characters, which a lot of other healing spells cannot. Being a charisma caster can help you be the face of the party if you want to be, just like the Warlock. You get to have some martial abilities, often associated with fighters, while also being half casters. Most of the oaths are good choices and can help you make decisions when designing your character. If you're an Oath of Devotion Paladin, what are you devoted to? If you're an Oath of Vengeance Paladin, what are you trying to get revenge for? This kind of stuff can help you build your character's backstory by just answering a simple question. I think a common misconception with Paladins is that you have to follow a god. In 5e, a Paladin just has to be devoted to an oath. He has to have an oath to something. I played a Paladin that the oath was to protecting the little guy. So if you were playing that Paladin and there were like gnomes in trouble and you didn't help, maybe you would become an oath breaker, but it wasn't that he followed a god necessarily. He did follow a god, but that wasn't the point of the character. The point was that he was devoted to protecting the little guy. Now, I hope you guys did like this video. Leave a comment if you think there are other classes and subclasses that are really good for new characters. Like I said, I think that any class can work. You can learn any class in 5e and it'd be relatively beginner friendly. These are just the ones that I would recommend to a brand new player most of the time. Now, if you did like the video, please leave a like, leave a comment. Like I said, if there's other classes that you think are good for this, leave a comment if you disagree with anything I said. And you know what? Tell me about your first character. I really like hearing about the first character that somebody got to play without a table. My first character's name was Jeffrey. There's a video on my YouTube channel talking more about the backstory of Jeffrey and what I liked about him, what I disliked about him. And I would really recommend that video if you're interested in hearing about that. And other than that, guys, I hope everybody is having an amazing day. And until next time, peace.